Greetings, my glorious Adeptus Custodes. Today I will tell you the truth. And it is, alas, not the truth that is known in every corner of the Imperium, for our dark past is full of bitterness and suffering. Well, many of you are wondering how I know so much about the universe. Why do secrets hidden from even the most loyal servants of the Imperium lie within the pages of this diary? Events so far in the past and so far in the future. Well, I cannot tell the whole truth, not even to you, my loyal Custodes. I can only say that the events on Molech and my work with artifacts from the dark age of technology are to blame. In my research, I have seen the events of many worlds and eras of countless galaxies, but I never knew what it was. The immaterium's desire to warp my mind, or just childish fantasies and nightmares, and nothing more. At the dawn of time, the ancients adjusted the development of certain primitive races to fit some specific purpose. At that time, the warp was not the hostile place it has become today. When the Necrons rose to war, the ancients created races to battle the threat they posed, giving them a strong connection to the warp and psychic powers to counter the Necrons. One such race became the Eldar. The word chaos can also be used as a synonym for warp, as the two are inseparable. Chaos is the boundless ocean of spiritual and emotional energy that fills warp. It is a great and raw force of change and power that physically and spiritually corrupts those who come in contact with it. Some chosen mortals, psychers, are able to control this energy and do things with it that transcend the laws of the material universe. But in doing so, the sinister power of chaos can gradually corrupt the untrained psycher, destroying his mind and body. The realm of chaos does not obey the laws of physics or logic. It is formed by the thoughts of psychically gifted beings, reflected in the warp, and merging into a single stream of psychic energy. This energy generates and nourishes warp beings, and they in turn are able to influence the thoughts of mortals in order to get more of the emotions they need. The power of chaos influence on the real world is limited by a special veil, separating the immaterium from the mortal world. The thinner the veil, the easier it is for warp beings to penetrate people's thoughts, and the easier it is for psychers and sorcerers to work. The psychic screams of millions of people dying on a sacrificial altar, or, at worst, in the flames of war, is a great way to weaken the veil. You can also make a hole in the veil. This would create a warp gap through which the border between worlds could be crossed on foot. Back in the days of the ancients, when the galaxy was orderly, the warp was a relatively safe place. In the last million years, however, it has been slipping into an increasingly catastrophic state. First, one by one, the dark gods gained power, one of which had a big meal on the ancient pantheon of the Eldar. At the same time, the largest warp tear, the Eye of Terror, opened, and most of the Eldar Empire fell into it. Shortly before my birth, the three Chaos Gods, Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle, had already begun to take form in the warp, though they did not fully awaken until the end of the Middle Ages of Terra. Slaanesh awakened later, marking the end of the Eldar Empire and the end of the Age of Discord, as well as the beginning of the Great Crusade and the rise of the Imperium. The rise of chaos and the first three Chaos Gods is said to be linked to the development of humanity, hinting that of all sentient races, it is humans who are primarily responsible for the disruption of the harmony of the warp and the birth of the first three dark gods. However, there is no doubt that all intelligent species have played their part in the birth of the Chaos Gods, although it is humanity that is particularly close to chaos, with its aggressive and unstable nature. Chaos is embodied in four main semi-material entities called the Dark Gods. Each of this powerful pantheon is a completely original being with its own sovereign sphere of influence. Even though chaos is already divided into four gods, each of them is still so mentally enormous that they have no physical embodiment and remain beings solely of the warp, which however does not prevent each from having a vast number of servants and slaves among the demon and material races, especially humans. Khorne is the god of war and blood. Nurgle is the god of decay and disease. Tzeentch, god of ambition, hope, and thirst for change. Slaanesh, god of sensual pleasures, sadism, and madness. The main forces of chaos are divided into 4 groups: the demons, heretics, chaos space troopers, and traitors from the legions of titans. Chaos demons, the most colorful of its representatives, are able to take physical form, but cannot hold it for long. Therefore, they have to use the services of living beings who can become guides of their essence. They erase doubts and fuel the fires of malice in the hearts of the living, helping them to achieve power and wealth, thus opening the way to the real world. On the various planets where they are worshipped, chaos communities and cults dedicated to the chaos gods arise. The communities revolt, destroy the planet's power structures, and lure psychers to their side. The result can be the emergence of a powerful surge of psychic energy, upon which reality-altering demons will rush. The loyal half of humanity has to constantly fight such manifestations. For the cultists of chaos, the worship of the dark gods is primarily a way to achieve their goals. Perhaps chaos is a cult of egoism, and as we know, all living, intelligent, and capable of feeling emotions, inherent in pride. Every faction has a place that is the center of its power. Chaos has one. Northwest of Earth, far out on the edge of the galaxy, is a place called the Eye of Terror. The Eye of Terror does indeed look like an eye, and is a swirl of stars that is the center of a constant warp storm. It's one of the most unique places in the galaxy, and it's unique in that it's where the real world and warp space intersect. No wonder it was chosen by the followers of Chaos, for through the Eye of Terror, demons can communicate directly with their followers. When the events of the heresy of Horus ended, the Chaosites retreated to the Eye of Terror. Many of them, as well as their descendants, remain there to this day. It is true that outwardly they have changed greatly during this time. Until now, the Eye of Terror is the most dangerous place in the galaxy. In the center of the eye is a center of chaos. All kinds of demonic entities feel like fish in water there, floating on the waves of energy. Due to the interpenetration of the warp and the real world, demons from the center constantly penetrate the universe, claiming into worlds near the capital of the Chaosites. Both psychers and sorcerers who have made a deal with a demon use warp energies filled with madness and mortal nightmares. It's no surprise that even without a deal with demons, such tricks carry the risk of going mad yourself. Bonus are the gifts of chaos. Those who fell under the corrosive influence of warp energies mutate according to the dark god's ideas of beauty. For example, walking corpses look very good in Grandpa Nurgle's view, being a carrier of all sorts of diseases. And the worst thing is that not only the careless psyker himself can suffer, but also those who were just standing nearby. Finally, the mind of an untrained psyker is usually easy prey for the inhabitants of the warp. And even if the psyker posed no danger in and of itself, a creature capable of destroying an entire planet could enter the real world through it. Because of the danger posed by psykers, there is about as much debate about the extent to which it is acceptable to use the warp as there is about the immaterium of humanity. Radicals argue that navigators and psykers are already marked by chaos, and as long as we use them, you can swing a demonic sword, as long as you can control it. Opponents of sorcery demand that psykers be kept to a necessary minimum. Of course, there are those who see nothing wrong with the side effects of an alliance with chaos. After all, if mortals didn't like the debauchery of Slaanesh, there would be no dark thoughts that spawned Slaanesh. That is why there are entire civilizations of Xenos who worship the dark gods and gladly use all available sorcery. And there are those among the human worlds who are willing to sell themselves to chaos. A world free of warp sorcery is hard to find in the Warp Gap region. The warp storm of the Howling Vortex, however, is home to the planet Mammon, whose inhabitants still believe in the Emperor. It's a planet where the inhabitants still believe in the Emperor, albeit in such a form that heretics fly there just for the fun of it. When a starship enters the warp, it determines which way the currents of the immaterium are flowing and, based on that, can choose a course that leads to its destination. However, the warp is capricious, and the longer the flight lasts, the less you can trust such rough estimates. Therefore, such warp jumps are made either at short range or at random. The Imperium of Mankind found a way out of this. Sitting on my golden throne, I directed the light of the Astronomicon's huge psychic beacon, and special mutant navigators navigate by it to plot a more or less accurate course. As a consequence, beyond the Astronomicon's range, the Imperium tries not to venture beyond it, and about a quarter of the galaxy is inaccessible to it. The alternative is warp gates connecting two predetermined points in the universe. But no one knows how they work or where they came from, so it's unlikely you'll be able to make more of them. And for every such gate, there is a fight between everyone who can reach them. Although creatures from the material world can enter the Chaos Realm, they are unlikely to survive there without protection. Therefore, when traveling to the warp, the ships of the Imperium of Mankind take with them a reality bubble held in place by a special Heller field. It's also a good idea to cover the entire hull with amulets. It doesn't give full protection against demonic infiltration, but sporadic sprouted demons can at least be shoved back into the warp. The Chaos sites themselves are unpredictable. When the Chaos Gods need a particular legion of traitors to arrive somewhere on time and unharmed, they can shout a few words at the entire immaterium so that the legion can go where they need to go through the pristine warp. Smaller and more insignificant Chaos sites make deals with powerful demons to accompany them on their flight and keep other demons from attacking them, or use protective black magic in the form of sorcerous glyphs. Orcs use their amulets and amulets that work on the power of Vogue to protect themselves while traveling through the warp. And if demons do penetrate an orc ship, it is purely their problem, in the sense of demons. The rest of the Xenos, except for the Chaosites, prefer to simply do without full warp immersion. Of course, it is safer, but the speed is quite a bit slower. Just as the creatures of the material world are unable to survive in the Chaos realm, Chaos spawn feel uncomfortable in the material world. If there is a passageway to the Chaos realm, the warp energies will feed the demon. But if the passageway is closed, the demon will quickly wither away and soon go home on its own. However, demons have their own version of defense. Having found some material receptacle, they can stay in it indefinitely, and in some cases, and against their will. Interestingly, time flows differently in and out of the warp, and not always in the same direction. Because of this, transportation of goods or troops on Imperial starships is always planned with a plus or minus tolerance. A ship may leave the warp the day after launch, or even arrive at its destination yesterday. Or it may travel through warp currents for years or centuries, or not at all if you're unlucky. Therefore, the only thing you can be guided by during the flight is the warp time. That is, the time counted on board the ship. It's relatively stable, but what time and what day it will be at the exit point, you can't always tell in advance. You know about warp, and you've seen its corrosive influence. It is chaos. It has now affected humanity, warping the best of us. All we can do now is stay true to ourselves, banish and deny him. Trying to understand it is a fool's errand. It will enslave us too.